Welcome back, everyone, to, we're back in with this young gentleman here, Mr. Keith Ferry. We are back. It's our part 3 of our breeding Norwich Canaries, breeding, exhibiting, molting Norwich Canaries with Keith. Keith, it's a delight to be back here. Thank you very much indeed for having us again. And, well, things have changed a little bit since we were last here. These flights are full of lovely looking young Norwich. It looks like it's been a good season.
Well, it has, yeah. I'm more than happy this season compared to last season. So things that sort of went right for me this year.
Yeah.
It's like anything, like I say, if things go wrong, it goes wrong right through the season.
Yeah.
Things go right, then you can't fault things.
No.
So, it's been good.
And just looking, there's a fair swathe of young, very nice looking fifes. There is, of course, some really lovely looking Norwich Canaries as well. But the season, it's early July. The season's not finished for you yet. There's still a couple of young in the nest, a couple of late bred nests here. But I say late bred, but didn't really start until April time. So
no, that's right. I mean, I'm not a real early breeder, like compared to the people on the continent who start January, February. I've said it before that I want to wait till the light days come and enjoy the birds up here, not come feeding birds while it's dark outside. So we say it's coming late in the season. I can remember years ago when we were still breeding birds end of July, August. But those days are gone, and I think the birds are more or less had enough, and particularly myself. To breed this sort of amount of birds, I mean, overall with a fife and Norwich, there must be about 150 birds here, and it's a full-time job.
Yeah.
It can be, and it's starting to wear me out. It could well be me age as well.
I don't think it's your age, Keith. I think for all of us, it gets to that stage where you get to the end of the breeding season, and then the hard yards really sort of step in, don't they? You've got to make sure you keep on top. I mean, the place again is, as always, is absolutely immaculate. And the birds looking, in really, really good condition. So today we're going to sort of focus on the end of the breeding season, and then getting birds through the molt, and specifically with the Norwich, colour feeding, and we'll also look. We've got a couple of shots of the show cages hanging on the flight cages, so the kind of the preparation for the show bench has started as well. So Keith, as we touch on the weaning of the birds, and it's as with everything in this setup here, it's methodical, it's really well thought through, and it's from sort of decades of experience of bird husbandry. So take note, everyone. I learn every time I come here, and this will be another occasion where I think, oh yeah, I should probably do that as well. So your weaning process, it's really in 3 stages, isn't it?
Well, yes. I mean, like you say, it's years of experience, and learning yourself, going through the years of doing it. But I mean, if I can just put over what I've learned, which can push on to other fanciers a lot quicker than have to wait these years, hopefully it'll help.
Yeah.
But my stage of the weaners is that once the youngsters jump out the nest, and they're at that age when they can be put into a cage side of the parents or the foster parents, put a slide in with the holes there. They can still feed through the holes without the worry about feather plucking or anything like that. And then you put a pecking board in there, and you leave them there until you're happy that those youngsters are pecking up. And then from that stage, what I do is take them from there to the flights. Yeah. And then they wean, I know they're weaned, and then group them up in the flight so they get the exercise and they get the food, and they'll stay there till they're 3 parts through the moult.
Yeah. And that, I mean, I think really from that sort of that process, it's really interesting for me because, you know, with the fives, I wean them in individual cages, and then I move them. I put some into flight cages. Those that I think are going to be exhibited, I put them into single cages almost straight away. And we had the conversation before about, you know, needing to steady the fives down, and that's not something that you particularly have a challenge with the Norwich, but sort of straight into the flight cages, as you say, they get that exercise. And I mean, we've got some shots of Keith's Norwich in the flight cages, and we'll enjoy those as we talk, but they're just, you know, they're active, they're picking up. You've got little bits of string I see on the side of the flight cage here. Is that just to keep the interest for those young birds while they're there, to stop them plucking feathers?
Well, I mean, they've got to be active, as you've just said, and they've got to have things there to keep them active. Like today, they've got broccoli, so they're on there, they're nibbling at that, and you know, from perches, being in a flight, they can fly from the bottom vertical, which has given them the strength in the wings, and that's what I like to see in Norwich. They need to have a good wing carriage, and the flights help. And I think if you leave your birds in breeding cages, double breeders, treble breeders, they tend to sit on a perch and mope around. But if they're in groups, they're bickering about, as long as there's not too much fighting, they're happy through the day. And the other thing for me is being in the flights, it saves me time going into individual cages. You know, it don't take 5 minutes to get the feeding into a flight. Yeah. And where it does, you know, 20 or 30 blooming single cages.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I think that when you look at that sort of the management of the stock there, as you say, you've got baths in there as well, so they're getting daily baths. They can just keep preening and keep going and keep active. The adult cockbirds, they are molting out in single cages, and one of the things you mentioned earlier before was about the sort of, you know, when that adult cockbird drops its feathers, you know, that's the end of the season.
Well, it is, yeah. I mean, once you see a cockbird drop a flight feather or two, you know he's not going to fill eggs. So you know that's the end of the season for him. So although the hen will probably want to go to nest, you're just wasting your time. So that's when I start breaking them up.
Yeah.
I mean, we just talked about the Norwich flights. They're not like other birds, like the fives. The fives are in the bottom flights, and I know for a fact that they need to get into single cages as soon as I can, because to steady them down. Yeah. They are flighty birds, and I know a lot of the, like yourself, the five people keep them in single cages. But while they're molting, and when the 3 parts through the molt, then I shall probably look at the better birds and start giving them some training. Yeah. Because I know that the five will take a lot more training than Norwich. The Norwich seem to train themselves up to a point.
Yeah, no, fabulous stuff. So Keith, last time we were here, I took some real comfort in it wasn't just me who gets the sexing of birds wrong, and we've got a couple of buff Norwich cocks that laid eggs. And we had a buff Norwich cock who was a very busy lad.
Yeah, he was. I mean, he was running between two ends, and with the two buff cocks what started laying eggs, I was short of buff cocks, obviously, and so we had to do the business, and luckily he did. And the two ends, every egg was fertile. So I had 2 good rounds from him with his 2 ends, which was 16 youngsters. Then I had a 3rd round with one of the ends, and I thought, well, I'd just see if there would be any. Another 4 fertile. So there's 20 youngsters here from him. So he's certainly worth his weight in gold and the feed I'll give him. So I'm well pleased with it.
Absolutely. So that's some strike rate. Now he is just breaking into the moult, but we'll have a little, we'll give him his own moment on camera, I think, because he's done particularly well for you this year, Keith.
Yeah, I mean, I've said before, he's not a supreme winner, but he was bred well, and what I've seen of the youngsters, I'm more than happy. So there'll be something nice to see out amongst them 20.
Fabulous. Yeah, no, absolutely, and you know, just looking around, you know, the sort of the half a dozen Norwich that we've got in the Canary room, I'm looking at them, and I'm coming in here and looking at how the master does it, and thinking, yeah, there's decades of experience for me to catch up on, but we'll get there. We absolutely will get there. So coming up, we are going to talk about the colour feeding, which is an integral part of preparation for the show bench, which will be our next episode with Keith. We'll look in our next episode, and I'm just making the assumption here, Keith, we're coming back to do another episode on show training selection and show team selection and exhibiting Norwich Canaries. So look out for that later in the year, but without further ado, if we head over to where the magic happens and look at the production of colour food.
Well, I'll tell you, Matt, I look forward to you coming in again and seeing if we have got a decent show team. And it'll be my pleasure to go through all the bits and pieces of showing birds.
Fabulous stuff. Stay tuned for that one, everyone. So, Keith, it's fair to say, you know, the colour feeding is an art, and it's an art that's developed over a period of time. That you know, you very kindly sent a little video on peppering the egg food using the pepper pots, and I'm doing that now, and that's the first thing that you'll talk us through today. So when you first pop the birds in and you 6 to 8 weeks.
Yeah, well, first of all, what I'd like to say is the system I use works for me. If people have got their own system and it works well for them, I suggest and advise you stick with it. But the system and the methods I go through hopefully will help beginners, and it's quite an easy system I use. So if people can pick this up and like to change it, their way they do it, they're quite welcome to. But if you already started at this time of the year and you've got it, I wouldn't advise you to change straight over to my system if you like my system.
Yeah.
But we'll go through it. So from the birds weaning into the flights, they're obviously used to their normal rearing soft food. So to get them used to and get it into the system, I sprinkle it, even with my birds, I sprinkle it with a pepper pot, just over as if you're peppering your own dinner. So they get it into the system. From that stage, then when I've mixed my colour food, which I shall show you how I do it later, I would, the pot I use it, I'll put half of the rearing food and half of the colour food, so it's side by side. Once they start eating it, it mingles in with one another. They get used to the taste of the colour food. Once they see they're eating all that up, then they go direct onto all the colour food.
So it's a gradual process.
It's gradual, yes. You know, I've heard people say they go from the rearing food system the next day straight on full colour food, which I don't think is the right method. That's for me. That's my system.
Yeah.
Because the bird needs to get used to that. There probably isn't a lot of difference in taste in using the cow food and that, but I'm sure the birds know. Yeah. Because I've tried it myself and they'd leave a lot of it.
Yeah.
But the way I do it, they tend to eat it all up and get it into the system. The other thing I will say is that, and I've said it before, you start colour feeding, but the first round youngsters is about 8 weeks old. The second round, they catch up a little bit, so when they're about 6 weeks old, you start giving them colour food. And when you start colouring them, they don't need a great lot. Individual birds in cages just want a finger draw. That's all they want a day. And you do it every day until they're about halfway through the moult. And then you can cut it down for two or three times a week. Once them shorter feathers around the head, that's when you only want to give it to them a couple of times a week. Because they store it in their liver, and you don't want to be bombarding it. If you give them full strength 7 days a week when they're molting the head, you'll get the goldfinch system with a darker head, if you ain't careful. It's just gradually weaning it back off them.
Right.
And then when you're showing your birds, you obviously need to give them a little bit each week, because if they lose a feather, it needs to be
It needs to be coloured when it comes back. So we start with the peppering, and it is, as you said, and I love this. When the video came through, Keith, it was like peppering your dinner. And I was like, yeah, I do that. I know exactly what to do there. And so that's the first sort of approach. And how long would you normally do with the sort of peppering? Is that a week, a couple of weeks?
Well, yeah, I'd say a couple of weeks. I mean, I've known people, I've told people how to do this, and they've stuck with it right through the season.
Right.
Because it's that simple. It's easy, you're only mixing one lot of food up, not, rearing food and colour food. You're just mixing it up and then just peppering it. The only disadvantage, over the season, you will use a lot more of the colouring agent.
Yeah.
But it's foolproof, and I've had novices display birds with excellent colour by doing that.
Wonderful stuff. And then the recipe then that you use for the colour food, and we'll have a look at you. We're back to Keith Ferry / Floyd in a minute with Keith in the kitchen, in Keith's kitchen. It's a whole new segment for the show, Keith.
Well, it's simple enough. It's quite simple. Once you get your basic bits, it's
and
fine.
so, do you when it comes to colour food? Because I know it for those of us who don't regularly colour feed birds, it can be a little bit of an anxious time. You don't want to burn the birds, and it's important to use Carophil orange and not.
Well, that's right. I mean, you hit it on the head there about burning birds. Over the British boys, they all keep a food knowledge and that, but they will use a Carophil red. Now, we used to use Carophil red in the old days, but if you didn't know what you were doing, you can burn birds. With the Carophil orange, which is only a mix of the red and yellow, at a ratio of 60% red, 40% yellow, it just breaks that down and you can't burn your birds with it. Apart from, like I say, if you give them too much when they're just molting the egg, you can get a little bit of the goldfinch blaze. So you want to avoid that.
Yeah.
Foolproof Carophil orange, I believe. And I advise any Norwich, Yorkshire man, that's what to use, not the red.
And so in terms of that sort of egg food mixture, you start. How does it start? So you get. Well, you talk us through it, Keith. I'm not going to make it up.
Well, the Carophil orange, whatever agent you use, Carophil orange, Quicko orange, whatever, it will give you the instruction how much to use. So that's go on that guideline, and then you'll add a bit more to whatever you think is necessary. And to see that, when they start molting, these youngsters at 8 weeks, when they're just like, the first area they start molting is the wing butt. So you'll know when you pick a bird up to see what the colour is that you're getting into that bird. And the wing butt being a short feather needs to be quite dense in colour. And if it's a nice orangey colour on a yellow bird, you know you're doing it right. And you stick to that. And to be quite honest, once you've got that right colour system, don't change it through the moult. It's no good changing it, thinking, I want it a bit stronger halfway through the moult, the bird will be patchy. So once you've got, that's the indication on the wing butt. That'll tell you what, if you're all happy with the colour.
Okay. And then in terms of mixing the Carophil, you put the spoon in, whatever it says, and you dilute it.
Yeah, whatever amount it recommends, go on that guideline. And you mix it up with what I use is 1 part for couscous, 2 parts of your rearing egg food, and 1 part of your caraway, which I'll show you, I'll demonstrate how to do it. It's as simple as that, you mix it all up. It might seem a lot of caraway when you see it in, when I do it, but when that couscous soaks it all up, it comes up nice and fluffy. Then I just add a few other things like conditioned seed in there, a drop of olive oil and grated carrot, and that's it.
Wonderful stuff. Well, it's time for Keith and his Floyd's kitchen. So, Keith, if we can, let's have a look at you making it up now.
Okay. Start the line, half a litre. What you need to be careful of is that you don't have this carousel dust go on your worktops and that. Put the top in, put the top on, and give it a good shake. The beauty about this modern carousel is you can dilute it with cold water. I usually like lukewarm water, but this out here is cold and it's mixing up fine. So on this bottle, I've got a mark somewhere there, which is half a litre. Okay, so that's my mix. Give it another good shake. Then 1 cup of couscous, 2 of my dried egg food mix. Hello. And 1 of the carrot. It's a real deep salmony colour. That's sample set. And the remainder can go into the fridge for another day. Now with the amount of birds you've bred and got, and you've only got a few, that's going to last you some time. So you can halve that and freeze it. But when this is soaked in a bit, I shall add the conditioned seed and then just moisten it up with a little sunflower oil I've got there and possibly grated carrot, and that's it. Done. Yeah? It's easy, isn't it?
It's what you know how. So Keith, we've seen we've seen the sort of the mixture of it, and you know, you talk about the simplicity of it, and it is really, you know, it is simple, but it's something that's been developed over a number of years. And you know, on behalf of everyone who watches the show, my thanks for sort of giving everybody a leg up and really sharing that. But you made a fair batch there, and you've got quite a lot of Norwich on here.
If I can just go and pick this up, so depending on how many you're feeding, if that batch is molds too big for what you want, you could split that in half and freeze it and put it in daily bags if you want. And what I find very handy is if I take the wife on holiday, which is not that often as we're breeding birds, but when they're in the moult, that's the time for me to go on holiday. So I've got some good friends up the road, Mick and Patrick Major, 5 men, only 2 miles up the road. They feed me birds, look hard in the tree. But I don't want them to be mixing colour food up, because they probably won't do it the same as I do it. So I mix a load up in daily bags, freeze it, and they just take it out the night before, put it in the fridge, it's defrosted for the next day's feed. So you can't go wrong in that way. One thing I didn't say is that some people obviously feed it in the water, and which we all know birds have got to drink, so you know it's going into them. You may have an odd bird or two what won't eat the soft food, but I rarely have that problem. The main reason I don't put it in the water is it's too messy. It gets everywhere. It's the birds bathe in it, the face gets covered in it, the floors get covered in it, so I don't like it. And that's the reason I'm doing that. But if you're happy with doing that, I'm not trying to change your system. You've got good colour by doing it, you stick to your own system. I'm just trying to make it simple, a simple way of people and beginners to pick this up.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I think, you know, that sort of, that stepped process, the sort of in thirds, you know, start with the sprinkling, then half and half, and then the colour food. I think that's, you know, the testament is in the colour of the birds. And as we took that close-up shot of both the yellow and the buff feathered bird, and you can see the colour starting coming through on the shoulder, on the wing butt, and that really gives us
that's an indication.
An indication of what's there.
And the other thing is that it's also in the bird, Matt. So it's the breeding of the bird, the feather quality. So knowing your feather, I've spoke about feather qualities, how to pair birds up, etc. You get a nice, good feathered bird that will bring the colour out. So it's in your line, it's in your feather. Some of the birds, some of these double buff birds, etc., won't get the colour like the birds what have been bred from yellows to buffs.
Yeah. No, absolutely, and I think, you know, that's important, isn't it? There is, I talk a lot, you know, over the last sort of 6 to 8 months or so, we've been, you know, in the company of some incredibly good bird people, and you know, one of the things that always sort of comes back to, there's no quick way of doing this. It takes time, it takes patience. Keith's been very, very generous with his knowledge in sharing, you know, his approach to things and how he gets birds through the moult. But it is about having the right birds. It's about breeding the right birds and developing that stud over time. And when we think, Keith, about the rest of the moult, you know, the birds have got talked a lot about, you know, keeping them interested in with the broccoli and the various bits on the side of the cage, and they're bathed as well frequently.
Well, yeah, I mean, it's something which is very important in my mind, is that especially these young birds in these flights, they have a bath every day, clean, fresh water, and once you put that it's a big saucer I'll put in there. Once one youngster goes in, they all follow. And it's really good for them birds and for molting to keep, wet the feathers. They're preening most of the day, and it does them good to get you through the moult. What you're after is a quick moult, and you give them everything which can enhance that quick moult.
And you mentioned earlier on that you'll get to a stage where you'll whitewash the windows and you'll drop the lighting as well.
Yeah, I mean, as you know, and you'll just film that I've still got chicks in the nest, so I want it as much light as I can just to get those birds developed in the nest, and when they're ready to jump out. then I will whitewash my windows with greenhouse whitening, which stops any sunlight in them, and then I will decrease the hours of the lighting and probably bring it down from 7 o'clock in the morning till 12, so they get a good feed, but there's no lighting in the afternoon. Whereas at the moment there's lighting on from 6:30 till 8:30 in the evening. That's mainly to rear the youngsters. But I shall knock on. And those birds what are still in breeding condition, now I wonder what the hell's happened, and then I'll drop into a bloody mouth. Hopefully, fingers crossed.
Yeah. Like, what's happened here? What have you done to us? And then Keith, you talked a little bit as well about then the sort of, as you get into that advanced stage, then the spraying starts and you'll spray them.
Probably, once they're nearly through the moult, and they get them into the sheen on the feather, etc., is the bar thing, but also you can go around with spraying, and I generally use soft water. So I've got water tanks outside, rainwater, and I put a little bit of it's rose water and glycerin, just a few drops into a spray and spray them. So again, they're preening themselves most of the day and bringing that quality of feather up, and it helps them to finish them off.
And these are, I guess, now is about the steps to get these birds into show readiness, and also we've got the training cages hanging on the side of the flights, which the Norwich and the Fifes are some of the Norwich are like front rows. They're trying to get in there.
Hanging the cages in, they're self-taught, self-trained. It saves me a lot of time handling birds, etc. They will need handling, and with Norwich, I do like to handle them in my hands anyway. Get used to you, but they're already used to the show cage, so there's no problem putting them in and out of the show cage. Same with the Fife. The Fife will have to go into the single cages not too far in the future to get them steady and get them down. But the Norwich, they're more self-trained, and saves me a lot of time.
Wonderful stuff. So we've alluded to it. We are going to come back. Keith is very kindly going to do another episode in this series, this mini-series on the Norwich Canary. We'll come back a little bit later in the year. We'll look at the selection of the show team, and then maybe the selection of next year's breeding stock. And who knows, Keith, we might do it all again next year.
Well, you're welcome anytime. But if any, the main thing is to encourage this hobby. And any beginners out there are disillusioned on their birds, etc., hopefully this will help them and pick a few tips up and keep at the hobby.
And it's not just the beginners. I know from the feedback that I get from our episodes with Keith, people who've kept birds for 30 odd years. If I think about the eggshell episode last time with the, doing that, and I have done it. I used it and it worked an absolute treat. So that'll be part of what I do moving forward. Keith, again, on behalf of everyone who watches the show, thank you for your time today. It's been wonderful to see you. Wonderful to see the birds sort of develop over the last couple of months since our last visit, and I very much look forward to seeing you again next time.
Well, it's been my pleasure as well having you down here, and like I said, if it helps people, I'm more than delighted on that. And I look forward again if you do come next year. Let's hope we have a decent season like we have done this year. Yeah. So that's what we're striving for every year, isn't it?
Fabulous stuff. Until next time, everyone, take care.